Welcome to Kumba Software DPAA tutorials. This tutorial is about basic status monitoring using the DataPower Administrator's Assistant. So be sure to set your video playback to high definition, and though some visual details of DPAA might have changed since this video was created, the functionality will be the same. I've started DPAA. I have a couple of appliances selected. I have the default domain selected, though in this video tutorial it doesn't really matter for the status that we will demonstrate. And on the status tab, which is the second tab in the list of tabs across the top of the main fortune screen, and in this tab, I list all status providers available to us using DPAA and DataPower. I can select any status provider just by clicking on it. Since there are so many, if I want to jump straight to a status provider, I can click anywhere in this list and start typing. So to find, say, the memory status, I can just type MEN, and that would take me straight down to the memory status. Now I have a couple of them because there have been different versions released by IBM for DataPower over the years, and so you may prefer to use the newer one over the older one, and you can see some other status providers have the same kind of new version versus old version list. To own a memory status, I go over here and after selecting it, I simply select the right arrow button to the right, and I'll get an output of the memory status. I can rearrange these columns as I see fit, and the default behavior is to insert all status information at the top of the table. However, every time you run this, you get a single output record of the appliances and the domains and the memory status or the status you have selected. To continuously monitor, I can turn up the update frequency to something like 5 seconds. This is in milliseconds. And I can also set the maximum number of rows to a value to keep it from running indefinitely. To start continuous monitoring, once I've entered in my update frequency and my maximum rows, I select the right or the start button, and it will now every 5 seconds go and pull the selection of appliances, and if the status applies to individual domains, such as in a load balancer group status or something like that, you may have many rows output per each run that it makes. You can also see that there's an icon here that indicates that this status provider is running. If you feel that the status provider is updating too quickly or too slowly, you can modify the number in the update frequency on the fly. And now you can see we're really adding them very quickly. I can say maybe it's running a little too fast, so I can slow it down on the fly as well. I can also control the maximum rows by dropping it down. You'll see in a moment that when we drop below a certain number, that the screen's going to automatically update as this frequency updates to set the maximum number of rows to the value you provide here. If, however, you want to list them indefinitely, you can set the maximum rows to 0, and it will keep adding data to the table, adding the latest or the newest status results at the top, push the other ones down into the table for as much memory as your system can hold. To set back the maximum row value, you can just simply toggle the value off. To stop a running status provider, you simply select the last button in the group, and we're going to select that button, and then we can see that it has now stopped running. Now, depending upon how long this update frequency is, it could take about that long for it to fully stop. It will stop on the next rotation. I'm going to start the status provider again, and then I'm going to go to the network interface status, and I'm going to set the update frequency here to 4 or 5 seconds and set the maximum rows, and then I'm going to hit the Start button. In this case, there are a good number of rows that show up for the status provider, so you may want to be careful about how you set the maximum rows in this table because you may not get to see all of the data kicked out for a given status provider. So you may want to start with the maximum rows at 0 to see what kind of data you get, and then tune the maximum rows to the number you may want to limit in the table. You might also notice the memory status is still running, and you can indicate that not only by the color, but by the little icon. If I select that to the memory status, and we mosey over here where it's a little more obvious, we can see that we're still getting statuses every 2 seconds over here for the memory status. And likewise, our network interface status is still running. Let's suppose you started quite a number of these and you want to stop them all. For example, you started 4 or 5 to do some kind of analysis. Well, in this case, you can stop them all at the same time by clicking the Stop button that exists above the status provider list or next to the status provider's title. Now, I have stopped both of them. Now, since this was the last one I've been selected, it's showing selected, then the data still remains in the table on both of the status providers, but they're no longer actively running. That's all we have for this video. So if you need to see the other videos, for example, advanced status monitoring with filtering and alerting, or you want to see how to do graphing of certain status elements, go over to www.kumbasoft.com. Go to the Features and Tutorials page, and you can see all the other features and tutorials available to you and links to the other videos related to this one. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.